Banned in Britain. Banned in Britain. There's a wonderful article written by Ben Shapiro, Savage's Badge of Honor, where he writes the following. He said the British government's decision to ban Michael Savage from entering the UK based on his political viewpoint and opposition to the global domination of Islamic Sharia law put Savage in the same company as Winston Churchill and Prime Minister Gordon Brown in the same company as Neville Chamberlain. Remember, Savage is the recipient of the Talkers Magazine 2007 Freedom of Speech Award. He is an ardent advocate for liberty and freedom and a leading opponent of global Islamofascism. During the 1930s, Neville Chamberlain pursued a policy of appeasement that brought Europe to its knees before Adolf Hitler. Even as Hitler planned his domination of the globe, the BBC banned Winston Churchill, Hitler's leading political opponent, from the radio. Even after the beginning of World War II, the BBC censored Churchill, considering him too inflammatory in his description of the Germans. Today, as Britain gradually kowtows to Islamofascism in the form of domestic acceptance of Sharia law and radical Muslim rallies, they seek to censor Michael Savage in the same way they censor Churchill. By placing Savage on the same list as representatives of Islamic terrorists and neo-Nazis, the Brown government has attempted to draw moral equivalence between those groups that speak out against Chamberlain-esque appeasement of Islamofascism and the appeasers and Islamofascists themselves. This moral equivalence is utterly false, and worse, it is dangerous, not only to free speech values, but to the continued freedom of the West against those who would seek to enslave it. Brown will be listed in the history books alongside Chamberlain as an appeaser of tyranny, and Savage will be listed alongside Churchill as an advocate of liberty. Today's Gordon Brown-led British government is an appeasement-oriented as its 1930s predecessor. According to the Telegraph just last week, the leader of the radical Islamofascist group Hizb ut-Tahrir held a rally in London in which he called on his followers to support jihad against Israel. 4 years ago, Tony Blair promised to ban another group from Britain. According to the Telegraph, last month the British government led by Brown was forced under pressure to deny entry to Ibrahim Moussawi. Until conservative opposition arose, the Brown government had been prepared to admit Moussawi to speak at the University of London. Moussawi describes suicide bombers as martyrs and calls Jews a legion on the forehead of history. According to the Sunday Times, quote, Islamic law has been officially adopted in Britain, with Sharia courts given powers to rule on Muslim civil cases. The government under Brown has quietly sanctioned the powers for Sharia judges to rule on cases ranging from divorce and financial disputes to those involving domestic violence. Ben Shapiro goes on. Considering the historical position of past liberal British administrations, radio personality Michael Savage finds himself in the best of historical company with Winston Churchill based on the position that the Gordon Brown government has taken towards Savage today, said a spokesman for Talk Radio Network. Winston Churchill claimed that in the years leading up to World War II, he was banned from the BBC for a period for up to 8 years. He was put into political exile where he was labeled an extremist at a time his voice and free speech was needed most. This attempt at marginalizing Savage and Savage's free speech is no less egregious than what Churchill experienced in the hands of Chamberlain's government. It simply validates how history does repeat itself when history's lessons are not learned by leaders of this modern age. TRN went on to say the American way is sustained by the linchpin of freedom of speech. TRN's position, that's my syndicator, towards all of its hosts is that of the classical liberal who says, even though I may disagree with you completely, I will fight to the last breath to defend your right to speak freely. Sadly, the Brown government veers away from this, abandoning its principles and departing from the position of its own people. So, do you think this is my badge of honor? Do you think that the British government owes me an apology? I'd like to play a little bit of music, perhaps not Living on a Thin Line by the Kinks, which I love very much. How about any one of the others? God Save the Queen by the Sex Pistols. Had it right. There is no future in England. They were the renegades. They were the outlaws in the music world, and they were attacked by that government. They saw what was coming in their own deranged, drug-infested minds. They sensed what was coming. And you liberals once sensed that fascism might appear its ugly head in the United States of America. You feared it, but little did you know that it was your head itself that you feared. God save the Queen! The stories are money! What I'm going to suggest you to do. Go to michaelsavage.com, see the articles written on WND and all the other sites that are covering this story today. Check out a copy of my new book, Savage Radio Story, Psychological Nudity, and send it to England, to Jackie, the Home Office Secretary. Send her a copy of my book. Maybe it's one-armed Frank that she's afraid of.
AM 560.